Welcome, Rebels. In this episode,
how do you distinguish? Because you talk about head, heart, and some other things. As a seeker, it wasn't a book; it was a podcast I was listening to. Talked a lot about ego.
Ego is neither good nor bad.
Yeah.
It's just a function of the mind.
Yeah, how you attach your relationship with it, and
What you identify with is ego. Do I identify with my wishes and desires and longings and stuff like that are just wishes and desires and longings? Or do I identify with something that's really deep within me, like to build the kingdom of God, or to make it happen through the center, or to talk to this person that I don't know on the street? And I feel a real draw to that. And I say to myself, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't feel it. But to identify with that, so that's what we need to learn. And that only happens, I think, through deep inner work. And so the dreamers out there, the people who need to dream and need to go inside, need to understand those dreams. Where are they coming from? Are they coming from a wounded place, or are they coming from a place that really is loving and of service?
you're listening to the Red Couch Rebels, a safe, comfy space for vulnerability and self-growth. I'm Jenny.
And I'm Erin.
We are seekers and self-advocates.
Yeah, we're not your doctors.
Or your therapists.
No, we're just fellow seekers on our own journeys of self-discovery.
Explore your inner rebel with us.
Let's sink in. Welcome back to part 2. We have Michael Ketterhagen back here with us on our Red Couch exploration. If you didn't catch his part 1, he shared a lot of great stories from his life, explored a little bit of the concept of his rebel and what that could mean, any resistance to it, how it showed up. He's calling it more countercultural. So if you haven't heard that one, go back and listen to part 1. And we are here. Thank you so much for coming back. We had to come back the following week because we had a little scheduling conflict. So that's why we have different attire this time.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So this is, we really want to explore today your journey with the Center for Spirituality and Healing. And that came out of your PhD thesis work.
Correct. Yes.
I really would like to sink into what those experiences were like for you in the beginning, in the buildup, in the challenges and the struggles and the successes, because as I said on the last episode, I believe we all have a dream planted in our hearts, and we can learn so much from people who have followed those dreams.
Right.
And I'm hoping to learn more from you on that.
Good. Well, the center, as you said, started with my doctoral dissertation, the Fond du Lac Center for Spirituality and Healing, the Theory, Design, and Business Plan. And I really wanted to have a doctoral degree that wasn't just and a dissertation that wasn't just stuck on a shelf, that would academically do, people would look at it academically. And because my whole thrust in life was pastoral because of my early training in the seminary, and service. And so I began to then develop this social action work, as I would call it too. So the board that I was working with, the Grain of Wheat Community, it's called, said, well, okay, let's try to start a center and let's move it towards, because we moved away from the residential center of in Campbellsport area in Armstrong and moved into the city. We were raising our children and sending them to school, and Mary was nursing there, and I was also teaching at Marion there. And traveling back and forth became not so good, and the 17 miles each way. And then also, too, we didn't have enough resources and people power to really sustain a self-sustaining religious community out in the farmland of the town of Osceola. So one of the board members, said, well, let's see if we can find a place. So we found a place on the third floor of the old Woolworth building, downtown Fond du Lac. And he said, it's a real nice, quiet place. And I went back in there. I couldn't hear anything, even though it was right on the main street. And we'll be the first place in there, and the landlord will help us, build it out. So the money came forth. It was really sort of amazing when I mentioned it to a few people. All of a sudden, people started to contribute to, rebuilding and building out that space. At the center started on the first floor, and we were in on pieces of carpet on the floor. The walls were just really plywood and drywall. And we had yoga there, and we had first yoga teacher training class there, and we had our Tai Chi classes there, and it was just an unfinished space, large enough to hold these sort of classes. And then we had contracted to have the third floor built out for us, and it was amazing. I just worked my tail off, just trying to make it happen, and I just had faith that it would unfold, and it did. It just I never knew how we were going to get this money or that money, but the vision kept coming clear as to what is this that we need, this room for this room for that, and it began to move into a couple other a holistic health place, because a couple other practitioners, one a Tai Chi teacher and then another an acupuncturist, said, yeah, I'll join you, we'll do that. And then there was a massage therapist who joined us, and so it became a center of holistic health.
Can we back up just for a second and share with people who may not be familiar with the center what your mission was, and when what really drove you? I know this was schoolwork, right? But it's something from your heart that was coming forward. So can we get into the mission of it?
Well, I really wanted to be a teacher. I really wanted to be a healer, is what I mean. And all of our life, by our, I mean my wife Mary and I, we really wanted to help build the kingdom of God on earth. And so the board that we had that really started the center developed a mission statement that it would be a place of peace and calm and transformation that would allow people to experience their oneness with the source of life. And it would offer services and programs that would develop the wholeness of a person's body, mind, and spirit develop. And so it wasn't quite the wording of the mission, but that's the concept, that I was doing. And that was the one that drove me and us. We wanted to, as much as possible, do everything we possibly could to build the kingdom of God on earth. And after a while, I realized that the kingdom of God on earth wasn't just a residential community out in the country where we sustain, but it was also the kingdom of God within. And because according to Scripture, when Jesus was asked where the kingdom of heaven is, he said it's within you. And really the translation is, the word is hemon, which means within us, within our midst, and within us. So it's just all around and everything and everywhere. So then the holistic health tradition, which was starting to take a root in my life, and I was part of my doctoral work and studies. I studied what the early Western understanding of holistic health was, and then the Ayurvedic understanding, and then Chinese understanding of what health was, balance and non-duality, and began to then incorporate that into the ideas, not only in the dissertation, but in the actual building out of the space. So we built massage spaces, we built acupuncture room, we had a large yoga center, yoga space, and then we had a meditation space in back, and it eventually began to be quite a popular place originally, because we were the first people really who taught yoga in Fond du Lac. And yoga was beginning to be a fad around the year 2000 when it happened. And it was beginning to be popular. And that's what I learned, that the center became and the people in Fond du Lac, especially those with discretionary money, were really faddish in the sense that they went out for whatever was new and exciting and interesting. They do it. So when a hot yoga place opened up, they would go there because there was something new and exciting and interesting. We would teach the traditional uh, way of yoga and meditation, and yoga really was intended to be meditation, joining of the body, mind, and breath, which really is the breath is a symbol for or manifestation of the spirit. So that was that. So we wanted people to experience that source of life in that way. And of course, the body gets in the way if it's not healed, and massage does that. And Tai Chi is really the Tai Chi that we taught was a Tai Chi of healing and meditation, and not just the martial arts. But people would come because they wanted to learn the martial arts, and because our culture is really oriented towards the outside physical world. And there was even a time when we were thinking of having an anesthetist come and be with us, because there's a lot of desire on the part of especially women to look beautiful, and according to what the culture says is beautiful. And then out of that we could then offer them other things besides the beauty, which would be meditation and relaxation, things along those lines.
So those first students that were coming to the center, were they coming because they were curious of this yoga thing, or was it more the spirituality side of it?
There were two groups that were part of it. There was a spirituality group that really started to come to the center, and then we had all kinds of alternative healing modalities, like tapping and using pendants to help so that people would be in contact with the spirit world. We even had some spiritual artists come and do some classes for us. And then some people who talked, we had a Buddhist monk come. And so there was a lot of that spirituality, and the center began to be known as a spirituality place, especially when some of the other teachers that we had, or teachers that came in from other trainings, because we had teacher training. It was a 200-hour Himalayan teacher training, and some people were trained in yoga teacher training in different traditions, and they would come into the city, and they would then pull people into that yogic physical world, and yoga became a physical exercise in many people's heads, and it was for a long time. So there were those people too who came because they wanted to find out about yoga, and they wanted to find out about yoga from that physical, exercise. And okay, I'll be happier, I'll be stronger, I'll be more flexible, I'll be more balanced, I'll be physically more fit and stuff like that. And as the culture evolved, the yoga culture evolved and became more popular, then that's, of course, was the big draw. And so later on, we became more and more known as the Spirituality Center. And so and with that, known as the Spirituality Center, our population started to decline, which was quite a phenomenon for me. And I began to then realize that, maybe we weren't supposed to become a huge holistic health center. Maybe we were supposed to be, as I've often said to you, Erin, an incubator for people. And so people would come in, massage therapists would come in, and their clientele would grow and grow and grow and grow, and they wouldn't fit in the center anymore. So they'd go out, or someone would come in and find that they wanted to do something a little bit bigger, and they wanted to be on their own. And so we became that incubator, which meant then that we were really always flatlining ourselves financially. And so that became a challenge.
And that's one of the struggles I'm aware of, like how difficult that was. And I think this is a good example of one that I'm aware of that we could sink in to help people prepare in a sense that you had a dream and a vision of where it was going to go, and it's unfolding before you, and you're in the excitement and it's building, and then they're gone. And I was there, not when it first started happening, I don't think, but we discussed it as it was happening, and it was really disheartening.
Yes. It was disheartening for me too. It was really a painful experience for me, and especially when I started to back off as a director,
Mhm.
and we hired a director, and then and through that whole process, that director eventually ran our line of credit to its max, and knew that she could no longer pay herself, that she resigned, and there we were left with a debt, and there we were left with a regular income that we weren't that wasn't coming in to fulfill even the rent needs and some of the other things.
Mhm.
So we had to uh, ask again for help, and it came through that the people who were really interested in yoga and the spiritual dimensions of reality and stuff like that, came through and helped pay for some of the things. And about a year or two later, we were able to burn the mortgage and burn the whole thing, and we began to sustain ourselves on a regular basis. And I worked for nothing all the time,
Mhm.
and that was an issue that uh, needed to happen, and we needed to even negotiate with the landlord if we could reduce the rent a little bit here and there. And during the pandemic, thank God for our landlord, he only allowed us to pay rent whenever we had it,
Mhm.
and uh, and we were able to then go through that and gradually build our clientele back up again, just so that we were able to have the cash flow to pay the full rent that we had originally said, um, and then we got it. So it was, as I understand it, the work of the Divine Mother.
Mm.
It was and I always just say this, and I'm convinced that the center survives because the Divine Mother has wanted it to survive.
Mhm.
And the Divine Mother has given me insights as to what needs to be done in this crisis or that crisis or this situation or that situation, and then it would follow through. I'd have an insight onto what needed to be done here, and a desire to request something from the landlord there, and everything worked out.
Mhm.
And so we worked, and we've been there 24 years, and now we've just moved to a new place because the rent was going up more and more at our old place, and on Main Street, 74 South Main, on the third floor.
Mhm.
And the clientele was, I mean, fewer and fewer people were coming downtown,
Mhm.
and they were not coming downtown because the environment downtown was too scary for them. Whether it was or not was another reality, but in their minds it was. And
Mhm.
so we moved, the new board moved us to a really beautiful, lovely place along the Fond du Lac River, and we pay less rent now,
Mhm.
and we have a smaller space, but we're really focused now on yoga, meditation, and some of the more subtle aspects of holistic health. Yeah.
So it took a lot of generosity. It wasn't,
Yeah.
yourself as the founder and director. A lot of the yoga teachers taught for free, like at Karma Yoga. A
Right.
lot of them continued to teach at the center. The community itself
Right.
saw the vision and mission and contributed to that.
Right.
So it really was a community that was holding this together and still is.
Correct.
In the last episode, you had mentioned that you didn't feel like you were a good community builder, but Mary was. And I was curious. I wanted to
Right.
come back to that.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Mary knew how to gather people together. She would
Mhm.
say, "Come on over for supper," and we'll and people would come over. And Mary would feed them, and Mary's a really good cook and a really wonderful baker too. And then Mary would start a small group of discussion of a group of a certain book, and started out with 4 or 5 women, and now it's up to 12. They come on a regular every Friday morning, and whenever whenever something needed to be done, or whenever we need to talk about something, Mary said, "Come on over for supper and we'll talk about it." And so that's exactly what happens. And Mary really, people love people love Mary.
Oh, yes.
People respect me.
Oh. Hmm.
I but I found out differently this
Yeah.
past couple of, well,
Can we go back one second?
Sure. Yeah.
So you're saying that was a perception
Yeah.
that Mary was loved and you were respected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I didn't really love myself.
Okay.
And so I never really experienced that deep love until I went through my cancer experience. And I talked a little bit about that last time, I think, about the trauma that I went through and wondering whether or not I should continue the holistic health path or work together with the medical world. And I, through listening to the Divine Mother, my inner voice, and see, the inner voice to me is my Divine Mother. I mean, she talks to me all the time. Just like the Divine Mother talks to all of us all the time. But people don't recognize that as the divine. People think it's just their own inner voice. And now I know, in the scientific world, I heard that it's the called the architect of the thinking process of the mind. That's what the neuroscientists are calling it, because they don't want to call it God or spirit, because that's something that they can't.
It's very similar to creator. I can see this, it feels like a very masculine word to put on it.
Well, that's exactly what it is. All science that's materialistic is masculine, because the feminine science is a feeling science, an intuitive science, but not according to the medical world today, because you have to have evidence-based, stuff. And evidence means hard, firm, material, non-logical, logical sort of thing. And that's all the masculine power. And the masculine energy is dying away, and thank God, because it's been too destructive. It hasn't been balanced at all. It needs to be there, and it shouldn't be. There shouldn't be just the power and the control. We need to move back more closely to the matriarchal cultures of the Native Americans and the Aboriginals, and
we need a rebalancing.
Yes, right.
Yeah. I always caution on the dying. I don't want the masculine to die.
No, I can't.
I don't. Yeah.
If the masculine died in you, you'd never be doing this.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly. We talked about this with Ginny too.
Because you make a decision to do this podcast, and it's the masculine that does it. You know what? The feminine is the passive, lay back.
Right. Right.
Oh, I think it'll happen.
Let it unfold.
No big deal. But you have to have the masculine.
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about a whole person.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of conversation about that. I think the conversation about that, or teaching about that, is happening through this electronic media right now, through like podcasts and other things like that. But it's not being publicly taught in schools. Education is a left brain experience.
My goodness. Could you imagine the controversy that would cause with you blend that with what's being heatedly debated today, and now you want to discuss that? Like, I think we're a long way away from that being able to be taught in schools, with how divided we are today around the idea of gender and masculine and femininity, right?
Well, if we began to teach some of those softer skills, they're called, and softer things, and really focus on that, it wouldn't be accepted in the academic world, because it's considered, even psychology and sociology are considered soft sciences. They're not the physics or the chemistry or stuff like that. It's the quantum physics world that now, of the physical hard science world, that's now beginning to understand that, although it's still run by men, beginning to understand that that everything is energy. And energy is neutral. It's either accepted and received, or you direct it. If you direct it, that's the masculine impulse of the whole process. If you accept it, that's the feminine impulse of the whole process. We need both in this physical, materialistic
world. You need
world.
the negative and the positive to interact
Right.
to create anything.
And even to
right?
call it negative and positive, to me is a problem.
Well, I'm sorry. I was talking more on like electrons and protons.
Yes, right. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. In the quantum physics world, yes,
Yeah.
you need those two forms of energy to make things happen and continue the change process.
Mhm.
Although there is moments when change doesn't occur, and that's when we're not in the physical world,
Mm.
when we're in the non-physical world,
Yeah.
because change is always in a part of our physical environment. And of course, that's the way we and the Aramaic Jesus understood God as always this constant birthing, constant breathing, constant masculine, feminine activity that's going on, always constant. That's the birthing, the fathering part of us, or the mothering part of reality. And of course, we've lost that because we're not in that cultural world. Understand, we're in this divided, modernistic world of separation and dualism.
What you're talking a lot about in what you've learned or along the way with creating the center, and obviously the masculine feminine balance is a part of it. What else was a part of the unfolding for you and realizations for you in creating that center and growing the center? And
well, it helped me realize that a lot of the things that I thought I needed to do and the insights that I got were really stymied and really stopped because of my fear. And this was my past training, because I grew up being afraid.
Sure.
I grew up wanting to make sure I pleased mom and dad.
Sure.
Wanting to make sure I pleased my teachers, and I was good at that.
Yeah.
Wanting to make sure I showed a good face for the environment, for the world, for people. That's why people, I thought, respected me, because I looked good on the outside, but I often felt like I was a fraud because I was really doing it to get praise, to get honor, to get glory, to get fame. And I realized that after a while actually through the cancer, and that's why I'm sure I had cancer, so that I could learn that that's not necessary. I don't have to go out of my way to be kind and good and loving to be loved. I am loved.
Yeah.
I think you had mentioned resentment in the first episode, something about resentment being attached to the cancer as well.
Well, yeah, I resented the idea that I had to look bad in front of all the people that I was telling go the natural route. I had to go. I had to go the stem cell route, and I had to go the chemotherapy route, and it was a problem. I resented that a little bit at the beginning, and then I've overcome that. I no longer feel resentful of that. I now realize that that's what I needed to learn to balance myself. I needed to learn to love myself and to surrender, which is the thing that Swami Rama, my yoga teacher, told me a long time ago, probably almost 25 years ago, when I said, how can I, build the king? How can I build the kingdom of God, or how can I know God and do what is right? And he said, just surrender.
I've heard that too, and that's like, and I've said this in other episodes, but how?
Right. And so now, and it took me 25 years to learn that. The how is to work with all the things that are creating fear in my life, and to work with my own inner world, and to heal myself internally, and to heal myself. And the only way I know to do that is, and I know that you'll get some kickback from you on this one, is through meditation. Because in that meditation process, I found myself learning about the things that I was not good at, things that I was not nice about, and learning to work with people and communicating my feelings and my and really exploring the deeper parts of myself. And that also meant then studying a different understanding of psychology, not the Western understanding, not the dualistic understanding, but the non-dualistic understanding, which is the only way I knew where that was in the yoga psychology world, that we are divine beings with a mind and a body. We're not minds that are divine. We're not bodies that are divine and have a mind, but we are divine beings who are here with a mind that needs to be healed. And the mind, if it's not healed, it will produce problems in the body. And I experienced that a lot. And when we don't pay attention, we'll get drawn back into stopping ourselves from killing ourselves on this earth and then doing something about it. And that's what happened to me. I had a farm accident when I was 14. I was an arrogant, little snot at that time, and came out much more concerned about the beings of other people, because I was in the hospital for 2 months and I couldn't do anything, and people had to always wait on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw, well, that's something I like doing. And then I began to think about being a helper. Yeah. And then of course, through my life, I began to then understand that my attitudes and my beliefs and what I was thinking had a lot to do with my physical health. And it even created, I think, in my own world, like, I don't know if I mentioned this last time, that it was out of my bitterness towards the things that happened to me at my last job that I developed this cancer, because blood cancer is, through my studies, I learned this, a lack of joy in one's life. And I always thought I was joyful. Yeah. I always thought I was optimistic. Actually, I was optimistic because I had a short leg as I grew up, and I never really had any back pain. And I always saw things as half full. I mean, I saw things as pretty full, not even half empty, not even, not even half full. Yeah. I mean, they're bigger than full. I said, well, there's a way out of this. There's a way to do this. But there was that bitterness that came to me, and that was part of that resentment that I built up towards the people that I thought were doing me wrong. And so I realized I had to switch that around. Things would have been a little different, I think, if I wouldn't have developed the bitterness.
Do you see joy and optimism as the same thing? Because they feel different to me.
Yeah, well, that's what I found out. Sure. That they were different. Optimism was, I can do anything, everything, and joy was, and optimism was, even though I'm struggling through this whole thing, we'll get through it. We'll get through it. And so it wasn't really necessarily a joyful getting through it. It was sort of like all right, we gotta get through it,
a faith that we'll figure it out. Yeah. We'll work it out, right?
Yeah. And it always worked out. It always happened. It usually did, until I found myself with kidney failure, and almost, if I would have continued on, the doctor said, you would probably have died. So right away, when I went into that doctor's office that day, because I thought I had a bad cold, I was sleeping 16 to 18 hours a day, and I was doing, for the past week, I had no COVID. I tested 3 times, and they found out my kidneys were, malfunctioning. I only had 12%. So I was ready to go into kidney failure, and that would have been a really hard thing. Then I would have had dialysis and all that other stuff, and that's pretty hard to get off of. But
so I have a question. Yeah. Well, I don't want to miss this one, because I think it's an opportunity for the dreamers out there who are going into their dreams, whether that's a business or volunteering, whatever it is, right? What advice would you give them around how would you be more joyful in it rather than optimistic?
I would have developed more of a positive love towards myself, and realized that I was always loved and cared for no matter what happened to me. And I felt like I was, I don't know if I should use this word or not, screwed.
You're fine. I dropped the F-bomb here, Michael. It's all good.
By the institution. I didn't, by the institution or the people. And there's to never allow myself, or never allow yourself, if you're a dreamer, never allow yourself to feel like it's another person's fault for what's happening. It may be, but don't blame them, because it hurts you. And it doesn't allow you to, or didn't allow me to creatively think and work on the things that I needed to work on. And I found myself, though, although maybe it was the plan that the divine has taken me through, because there is that possibility too, that I was going to have to confront the situation a little bit more strongly, and not just be teaching in my class and be a nice teacher, but really plug into and make myself a little known a little bit stronger in my
a little more of the masculine we were talking about.
Right. Yeah. Instead of just passively accepting this whole thing. But I passively accepted it with anger and with hurt. And the hurt really was something that I was hurting, was more harmful for me than it was for anything else. And maybe it was my purpose and meaning to move out of that place of employment so that I could do other things that I needed to do. And then, of course, when I moved out, I focused on the center. But then the center, too, was just beginning to go downhill more and more and more. So it became more of a trap for me in many ways. So,
do you feel it was tied? Did you tie it to your identity?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I had, of course, that's what almost every human being does.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I did that as well. The center was me. And if the center was going down, I was doing. And so I had to, when I retired, so I made a decision to retire about 8 months before I actually did. I said on January 1st of this current year, I'm going to retire from the administrative stuff. And the board, you're going to have to figure out how to keep the place going. And so it took me a while to just really let go of the books.
A while, Michael? This was like years in the talking about.
Right. Exactly.
Like, I just want to say, like, I know what a struggle that was for you, because it was such an identity, and it was your baby, and what was going to happen next, right?
Well, and that's the natural path of a founder. And you're right. But when I finally made that decision, it was a decision that freed me.
Yeah.
And that allowed me to move, away from being inundated by the burden of the center. And now I'm doing what I really love to do, teaching and talking to people like you, and writing and reading and learning. And the last quarter of my life now is going to be preparing myself for the next life. So I'm learning as much as I possibly can. I'm pursuing as much as possible my own yogic practice of meditation and all that, and everything that's included with that. And then sharing as much as I can with other people who are willing to listen, but I'm not going to force it like I used to. I'm just going to let it unfold. Although there is this desire inside of me, like you were talking about before, of really challenging the system. The system that I'd like to really challenge would be the way we deal with people in our society. Our children are not being cared for societally. There's too much inequity going on in the culture. We're spending way too much money on being the superpower of the world, and we're moving into an empire state of existence as a United States of America, and that's killing us and destroying us. And it's all a planned process. Sometimes I think it's a planned process by those who are really the elites in charge of things. But
will benefit from that.
Yeah, they benefit from the empire until the empire collapses, and of course the empire will collapse very shortly if they keep going in the way they're going. So, so now I'm because I don't want to go into it with a negative attitude. I want to build the kingdom of heaven on earth. So now we're going to gather a group of people together for supper and talk about what
There you
we
go.
can do.
Yeah, it sounds like a perfect
I
starting
love
point.
it.
Go back to
I
those
love it.
roots.
That's going to
That's
happen
awesome.
starting on Friday.
Yeah, that's
And then the week after
You're gonna
that,
need 2 more chairs, Michael.
and the week after that, we're going to see what we can do to make some other organizations know and hear about this.
Mhm.
Because there's now among that those group of people that we're going to have over for supper, there's now a desire to make some structural changes. So we'll see what happens. And in the long run is I need to now know, and I didn't know before. I thought it was all in my hands, but it's not. It's in God's hands. And I need to let go, work as hard as I can. And that's what happened to make the place, the center, valuable and worthwhile. I worked as hard as I could, and I just said, well, okay, God help. It's in your hands. It's in your hands. And now it's in the divine's hands again as to what's going to happen. And I'm still going to work hard, but I'm not going to say it's going to be my responsibility. My responsibility is to work. Do what I in my heart know is mine to do, and do in my heart not do what my heart says I'm not supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, it's okay. It's great. I was just starting to say there's so many questions based on last conversation and this conversation. I feel like we're going to have to continue talking, whether podcast related or not. But one of the things that I would love to know, and I think the dreamers and listeners might also benefit from, is when you think about your journey and creating the center and just being counterculture and listening to that inner voice, that inner rebel, that countercultural, divine mother is how you name it.
Right.
What would you share as like starting points for people really trying to weave or interested in weaving in spirituality with their self-growth and even, dream creation?
I would suggest getting with 1 or 2 people who have sort of that same uneasiness that you're talking about, or hope that you're talking about, and start to explore their inner world. Find a teacher who can help them do that.
Yeah.
That could be a counselor, could be a yoga teacher, could be someone like a wise mother or grandma or grandpa. But start to really work at the inner world and start to really explore what they want to do in life, their meaning and purpose. It's happening. I see my kids doing that. Not just doing it for themselves, but also being of service to other people. And working on different sort of, because there's a lot of information out there on helping people understand their psyche and helping people understand their values and how they form values and how they want to move in this direction or that direction. Then I also think they need to have some quiet time every day. Set up a pattern of quiet time. If it's with a cup of coffee in the morning, that's fine, but something. And then maybe move, and gradually if they find themselves nudged towards wanting to learn meditation because they hear it's something that they should do, Now some people say, oh, why don't you try this? Oh, why don't you try this? Why? And they keep hearing it.
It's kind of a fad. I mean, when you think about all the mindfulness apps and stuff out there. So I've been in that. I need to try this, and I've tried different things. So yeah. Keep talking.
And then in that process, you'll find the teacher that will help most. So if this teacher doesn't help you, don't stay with that teacher. Go to the place that is going to be helpful and for to a person, or go to a tradition that's going to be helpful. It could be Christianity in the positive, negative, and not negative sense, but it could be Christianity. Yep. It could be a women's group. It could be a AA. It could be something, but in other words, start a spirituality path.
Yeah. Find community is what I'm hearing you say.
Community is really important part of the whole process. And then someone who can help give you information to direct you in moving in a way that is not angry and not literal and not, not to say too fundamentalist in the approach towards separatism and partisanship and negativity. Don't anyone who's really negative, that's someone that we need to stay away from. But we need to know that we're valuable and worthwhile and good. And yet we also need to listen mainly to the heart. And the only way we listen to the heart is when we are going to spend some time by ourselves. And I've learned that listening to the heart is a challenging thing.
Yeah.
Because there's this mind that says, no, I should do this. Like even listening to our heart, I say this to my college students when I was teaching at Marion. If you all of a sudden get this inner voice that says you better go to the toilet, usually what happens to all of my students in class whenever they get that voice, they say, well, I'll wait till after class. No, you go right away. You go right away. The body is saying,
just go.
It's time to go.
Yeah.
It's time to go. What you're doing is you're teaching yourself how to kill your conscience or how to kill the inner voice.
How to suppress it, silence it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh, I'll go later. Or I'll do, and eventually it happens that you have to go, so that you have no choice in no matter. But we need to listen to that inner voice.
Yeah.
And not be rude about things or but just do. Excuse me, I have to. And all teachers understand excuses. Big deal.
Yeah.
And then you come back and you do what so listening to our inner voice is the key. And I've learned that if I don't do that, I'm really in trouble.
Yeah. How do you distinguish? Because you talk about head, heart, and some other things, as a seeker. It wasn't a book, it was a podcast I was listening to. Talked a lot about ego.
Yeah.
So how do you decipher head, heart,
ego is got a bad rap today, in my opinion.
Okay.
Ego is the mechanism, the mental mechanism that identifies with something.
Okay.
If I identify with myself and my own physical world and my own wishes and desires, then that's the ego that I'm living out of, the identification that I'm living out of. But if and I think it's easy for people to begin to tell the difference between what's the good identification. Say, if we identified with our divine self, then that's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's what we should do all the time. So now I'm beginning to learn how to identify with my inner voice and the divine mother within me. And what happens is usually I hear this inner voice tell me to do something and I say, oh, I'll wait until later. And then I realize that as soon as I push the word I there, that I'm talking about my small self.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about my big self. I'm talking about my small self. So then I would say, well, okay, should I identify with that now? In other words, live out my ego there? Or should I identify with the Divine Mother and live out that ego? Ego is neither good nor bad.
Yeah.
It's just a function of the mind.
Yeah. How you attach your relationship with it and
what you identify with is ego. Do I identify with my wishes and desires and longings and stuff like that are just wishes and desires and longings? Or do I identify with something that's really deep within me, like to build the kingdom of God, or to make it happen through the center, or to talk to this person that I don't know on the street? And I feel a real draw to that. And I say to myself, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't. But to identify with that, so that's what we need to learn. And that only happens, I think, through deep inner work. And so the dreamers out there, the people who need to dream and need to go inside, need to understand those dreams. Where are they coming from? Are they coming from a wounded place, or are they coming from a place that really is loving and of service?
I think that goes back to what we were saying before about joy. And if you start with that place of the divine connection and feeling that innate worthiness and letting that be your guide, which I would connect to my rebel, my language, right?
Yes.
If you're connected through that, then you're building your dream not from a place of, I'm going to earn my worthiness by doing this dream. Like when you say I'm going to figure it out, and that optimistic, like I have faith that I'm going to figure it out, could also mean I have faith that once whatever happens, then I'll be worthy, right? Like there's something there. Like if you can tap into that divine worthiness in the front end,
Right.
where you can have more joy, is what I heard you say earlier.
Right.
Then
Yeah. And even the whole idea of rebel, I can be a rebel because I want to be a rebel. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And it's not really an inner call. It's
it
not,
could be, yeah, right.
It's not really an inner call. It's a call of me asserting myself in this world.
Yeah.
Right. That's why we're the Red Couch Rebels. That to us helps define the difference in the type of rebel that we're trying to be, right?
Yeah.
Well, and the red couch usually is this, the image that I have of a red couch, the rebel, is someone who is sort of laid back and just interested in seeing what happens, and really isn't really pushing things a lot.
Oh, that's interesting, because I think of red as a very masculine color.
Oh, I guess I was latching onto the couch.
Yeah. Sure.
It's
so it's a balance
combination.
of masculine and feminine there.
So I've helped you define that whole thing.
Yeah. Well, it's been a part of it. The couch was really.
There was a lot of thought put into naming this. Yeah. There was we're running out of time here, but there were a couple other points I thought we could punctuate. Like the joy one was really important. There was another point in there. I'll come back to that one, because the third one was the community aspect, and allowing, like, if we're going to start something and it's going to live beyond us, we need to let the community own it with us, right?
Yes.
Right. And have that buy-in and let them grow it with us, so that when we want to step out, or we're ready to move on to the next dream we're being given, that it's already carried by a community. We aren't expected to carry these dreams alone.
Which was a learning that I had found out, that everyone was identifying the center with me, and not with a group, not with the board, or not with a group of healers. And I had longed to have a group of healers own the vision. And the vision probably was not voiced enough for them to begin to really own it. I would give them a copy of my dissertation where it had the part there that what the center's, and to help them begin to understand what it really was coming from. And I had longed for people to own my vision. And maybe I shouldn't have longed for them to own my vision, but maybe I should have longed to help learn what they understood this wording of this vision was all about.
This what sparked within them, and what they read or experienced in conversation with you, and then fan that fire.
Yes, and then that would take off. Because then there would be more people involved, and that's sort of what has happened with the current board. The current board knows how vital the life of the spirit is in my life, and they want it too. They want to make sure it's available for all kinds of people, and the new director is that sort of same style, and I'm glad about that. It isn't just a job or a function.
I'm so glad that somebody has picked it up, and that there is a new board bringing new energy, and that it'll stay alive. And I know we're running out of time, but I just want to say, like, we've talked about this incubator aspect, but what I see it is like you've thrown thousands of petals out, or pebbles, thousands of pebbles out into the water, and just all the ripples that have been created because you're brave enough to take a paper document and bring it into the real world. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been fun hearing people say, "Well, I never thought a place like Spirituality Center would ever survive in Fond du Lac." And it has. Because and people really want it to survive, and people really want not just that style of spiritual growth survive in Fond du Lac, but people want to become happy and whole and complete in Fond du Lac. And sometimes they're just not going the way it needs to be done.
I think there's something that I've been thinking a lot about, and I just want to ask this question. So hopefully I'm not derailing your wrap up here.
It's just we have 4 minutes. Yeah. Well, we're over a minute, actually.
Okay. So a lot, for me, this is my experience, but I think a lot of other people have this similar when they hear spirituality, they put their definition
Correct.
onto it.
Correct. Right. Would you like my definition?
Yes, exactly. That's what I would like.
The spirituality is the path that I take on my to or with the Spirit. If I think of God as separate from me, it's to the Spirit. If I think of God as one with me, it's with the Spirit. It's a simple definition because we're simply divine.
It doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's
so
beautiful.
much love for you, Michael. I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story. It's so much I learned about you in these 2 sessions. And
Thank you.
I can't wait to share your experience with the world.
Yeah, I appreciate this very much, the opportunity to do that.
It's been great.
Blessings to you both.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Namaste.
Blessings. Have you heard that? Blessings.
Yeah.
My friend Jenny Rainica always says
Blessings. What is I've heard you say it. What is blessing?
It's like sending you bliss. Like
Okay.
blessings.
Yeah. Versus
Bliss.
blessings. Yeah.
Bliss.
Yeah.
The technical definition of bliss is absence of fear.
Yeah. So I was the fear part I was going to come back around to, but I think there's aspects.
Well,
Thank you so much for joining us on the Red Couch. We would love if you would head on over and subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review. It helps us tremendously as we rebel against the status quo of disconnection. We need you. We appreciate you. You can also head on over to our website, redcouchrebels.com, to send us a note and explore your inner rebel with us on our online network. We'd love to see you there.